As you may know, the number of migrants crossing the Channel in small boats trebled last year. So how can we prevent these dangerous journeys? One solution proposed by charities like the Red Cross is to make it easier to get here through the official routes. Marcella Whittingdale has been speaking to refugees in Hastings who arrived through the government schemes.
Stitching their stories. Here at the Hastings Museum and Art Gallery, they're creating a patchwork of the moments and memories that illustrate life as a refugee. Khadija and her family escaped a brutal civil war in Sudan.
I will never forget my country because I was born there. I was brought up there. I spent all my life there. There's no way you can forget all of that. We ran away because of war. I hope my children will not witness what I did. I don't want them to go through what I've been through. I'm hoping they are safe and they will have a better life than the one I've been through.
The Stitch for Change patchwork is being made by the Refugee Buddy Project, which pairs volunteers from Hastings with newly arriving people seeking refuge to help them adjust. It was set up by Rosanna Lial, who says she'd like to see a rise in the number of people able to reach the UK by official resettlement routes.
What we share in common is that we've all had to seek refuge. We've all had to leave something behind. During the pandemic, the resettlement programmes were closed down. Hence, you actually saw more people coming across the sea because it was the only route they could take to come to the UK to seek refuge.
Before the pandemic, the UK was taking around 6,000 refugees each year through its resettlement schemes. Last year's figures haven't been released yet, but they will be higher because they'll include more than 7,000 people evacuated from Afghanistan. Meanwhile, tens of thousands of people continue to arrive through other routes, including more than 28,000 last year crossing the Channel on small boats. Hassan was born in Syria. In the UK for just 9 months, he's already in college and deciding on a future career. Like Khadija, Hassan arrived on an official resettlement scheme, but understands why people would try other way.
People in Arabic countries are living under severe conditions, especially the refugees in camps. They are living in winter with snow and storms, and they're really desperate to leave by any means, by land or the sea, to seek a better life. One thing's for sure, I'd love to do something really important and useful which will be beneficial to this country. It's very important to me. I want to do something useful to say thank you, because they provided us with the chance of being resettled.
The Stitch for Change patchwork is just one activity the Refugee Buddy Project is running to support refugees and migrants now living in Hastings. It's being shown at the Hastings Museum and Art Gallery at the end of June to mark Refugee Week.
Marcella Whittingdale with our report. To talk about this, I'm joined by Enver Solomon, Chief Executive of the Refugee Council. Nice to have you on the show again, Enver. Let's talk about Hassan, the young man in the film there. He came here on an official UN scheme. How does that work?
Well, these are schemes that are run by the UNHCR in countries around the globe where there are refugees living in camps because they've fled from their countries due to war and persecution. And they go through quite a complex screening process to identify people and families to come to countries in the West, including the UK and countries like the US, Canada, and other European countries. And that screening process takes time. Often people don't know which country they're going to go to, and the UN will work on identifying those that have been in refugee camps for very long periods of time and who desperately need to get to other countries in the West to rebuild their lives.
He sounded very grateful, didn't he? Is that typical?
It's extremely typical. I mean, we work with many people that have come through this route to the UK, and all they want to do is to get on and move their lives forward, to find a job, to get their kids into school, to be able to simply live safe and happy and healthy lives like we all want to do. That's all these people want, and they're very grateful to come to the UK and really want to give back to this country too.
Is it difficult? Is it a difficult process to get here under those schemes?
It's really challenging, and you know, there are not many places around the world where you can get on these schemes. There are many countries affected by war and oppression where these schemes don't exist. So lots of African countries, lots of countries, for example, in Myanmar, where there's conflict, where these schemes don't necessarily exist. So it's very difficult to get on the schemes. And for those people who do get on the schemes, there's a lot of work for them to do once they get to safety to really rebuild their lives, because they've been out of work, they've been out of education, they often have health problems, and it takes a lot of time for them to really get their lives back on track.
Is there a connection between how difficult that is and the increasing numbers of people coming by boat? That seemed to be what we were hearing from Rosanna from the Hastings Buddy Project. Do you agree?
I do agree that it's a factor to a certain extent. You know, this country doesn't take many people from war zones through resettlement schemes. The Syrian program took 20,000 over 5 years. That's 5 years. That may sound like a lot, but over 5 years for each year, it's just a few thousand. The Afghan program is going to do the same. And actually, there's many more refugees that need to get to the UK through safe routes. One of the main safe routes is something called family reunion, whereby if someone's here, they've been allowed to stay as an asylum seeker, they can bring their wife or their husband or their children over to the UK. But actually, under the government's proposals, they're looking to close down that route, which has brought nearly 40,000 people here over the last 6 years.
OK, let's bring our politicians in. Sally Ann, would you like to see more refugees coming to Hastings? So I've been looking at the figures, and this is for the government's official schemes. Between January 2014 and June 2021, 7.5 years or so, Hastings has taken 89 people. Would you like to see more?
I think we've got to be, obviously, can I just first of all say that Hastings is a sanctuary for refugees, and it is absolutely amazing what the Hastings Refugee Project does, Buddy Project, and I'm really proud of people in Hastings welcoming refugees like that. I think that when it comes to taking in families of refugees, you have to look at the circumstances of the town as well, and we do have a shortage of housing, so that's important to note that, and affordable housing we have a shortage of as well, so you've got to take that into account. So by saying yes, it would be great to have more refugee families in Hastings, we've also got to take into account the reality of the shortage of housing that we have there at the moment. Having said that, I do think it's important to note, I know the previous speaker was saying that we should be taking more refugees, but we do take more refugees than any other European country through the resettlement programme, and we have got the family reunion programme as well, which he rightly mentioned. And I think these safe routes must be utilised to their full potential. But I know that the government is doing a review on the safe routes at the moment, and it's committed to laying that before Parliament.
You've spoken out against the small boat crossings, haven't you? Do you think if the official schemes are better deployed, that this would stop it? I mean, are some of these people the same people in the end? Aren't some of the people... Go on.
I was going to say, I think we need to... I'd like to see the government's review. I think that's really important. But also, I think this whole small boat crossing, it is people smuggling gangs who are taking advantage of people, and we have got to stop that from happening because they promise the earth to people who pay money to come through these illegal routes, and it's really important that we stop that. Not just because it's people's safety, but also because I really object to criminal gangs using people as commodities like they do with drugs or weapons. It's really unacceptable. So I'm looking forward to the government's review.
Finns Maple, you have suggested that Medway should take more refugees from Afghanistan. Again, I've looked at the parliamentary data and there's a big gap for Medway. I honestly don't know what that means. Does that mean they're not taking any, or the data isn't available? Do you know?
I'm not sure why there's a gap in that particular government report. That would worry me. I would expect there to be a report, even if it said nil return. I'm not aware that the figure is nil, I have to say. But I want to go back to Enver's point around the complexity of the process. I'm currently supporting somebody whose sister is currently in Afghanistan. He's aware I will raise this issue today. The process is ridiculous. The responses I've had back from government departments trying to somehow get a piece of signed paper from Afghanistan so that we can talk about the issue. There's the bureaucracy and the red tape. We talked about cutting red tape. This is some red tape that needs cutting so that we can make this process. Of course, we need to have a process. It needs to be a fair process. We need to play our part as a global partner when we're trying to deal with war-torn countries. But I can understand having sat there with this individual who is rightfully concerned about his sister, who is part of the judiciary over in Afghanistan, so someone who is at genuine, real risk of her life. The frustrations are real and genuine. And I can understand how if someone, as unscrupulous as they are, was to make an offer to say, pay X pounds and we'll get this sorted, how that would be incredibly tempting.
Yeah, okay.
So I do
but
think
what
we need
about
to try
Alan
and do
Jarrett's, sorry to jump over you, but just for time reasons, Alan Jarrett, the leader of the council, says he's got to concentrate on the needs of the people in Medway. And we were covering that on the show last week with Kylie and Kirsty. I mean, it's really hard to look somebody in the face who can't put beds in the house for their children and say, actually, we're going to pay to have some more people from another country come and live here. How do you square that?
We're, whether it's Medway, whether it's Kent, whether it's the UK, we're one of the richest countries in the world. We should be in a situation where, firstly, we can be compassionate to our own people, and secondly, we can be compassionate to people who are in a war-torn or a situation which is putting, in this case, their lives at risk.
Okay.
We should be able to do both. The fact that we're currently, in some cases, doing neither isn't acceptable.
Thank you all very much. And Emma Solomon, thank you for joining us this week.